Hello, here we are. Actually, I'm in my backyard, but this is the second month in the E3LC, which is E3 leadership training and coaching that I do, along with some of the things. I've been trained as a musician. I've been trained do mostly that, but odd jobs throughout my life and all that sort of deal. But now I'm venturing forth in the whole leadership training and coaching side, and I've decided to do a book of the month to just talk about books that have been impactful for me in my journey to where I am now, and things that have helped me quite a bit in all the business things that I've done, and just people and relationships, and and things that didn't work out as well as all. I haven't shared a ton of failures so far, but I certainly have had my failures, and I can relate to having a lot. So the E3 part, just in case this is your first introduction, E3 is sort of my overarching concept about how when I talk about leadership and I talk about, say, getting better as a person, improving yourself, I think of it in this way. The three E's are this: effective with people, efficient with things, and encouraging with myself. And so what I decided to do is go do a book of the month and kind of go through a book every month and have it under that umbrella. So do months where it's about being effective with people, and then months that it's effective with things, and then encourage with myself. So we are in actually the second month of doing this, and I decided to do another classic. If you haven't seen last month's, go check it out on YouTube. Actually, go to it's actually under Furman Music, and I have a channel. I have a playlist there, so I'll be putting up links in my Facebook posts, and also if you have questions, you can reach me at kfurman at e3lc.net. So you can check me out there. Um, well, please send me an email. All right, so this month we are going to do more on being effective with people, and so another classic I mentioned, How to Have Confidence and Power in Dealing with People by Les Giblin. So this is it's an older book, just like Magic of Thinking Big was last month, but man, it just timeless things that just popped out of like, how did you know, that kind of thing. So I wanted to highlight the first three chapters. It's actually part one of the book, so that fit really well with what we're doing, and I also wanted to kind of talk about the front of the book. It's a very similar format to Magic of Thinking Big. It's not the same publisher, but there must have been a theme going on at that time because they were written in the same era, I guess, if you will. So one of them is they have this section of what this book can do for you. So apparently that was, you know, for publishers, they want to make sure that people know, like, okay, well, all right, what are they going to tell me? Like, okay, so they put a section like, what can I do for you? And there was a couple things in here that I thought were really, actually, really good. I've read this book a number of times. I can't tell you how many times I've read it. More than 8, at least. Anyway, and I've highlighted and starred this one, and it's in the what this book can do for you part. I'm just going to read it. So, because of just the way he put it, I think is really been helpful for me, right? And he says it this way. And so he's usually writing, but here's how I hear him writing it, right? Let's get one thing straight. Successful human relations means giving the other fellow something he wants in return for something you want. Right? And he goes on a little bit more, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But just the way he framed that was like, all right, let's get something straight. Like, he's just like, dude, here's the deal. Right? And I really enjoy that about him. I kind of like that. He's not trying to be erudite, right? Or being, arrogant or know it all. He's just like, look, here's how it is, and I appreciate that a lot. And it came through in his writing there. I think that's why I started. I just appreciate that. So he says, in light of that, he talks about there's kind of three ways to approach working with people. One is be forceful and intimidating, and you can get things done that way, but it's very short term. And a lot of people have written about that over the years that, yeah, it works definitely short term. And at times, there are moments in life where short term actually makes a lot of sense. And the example that always pops into my head is if your child, if you happen to be a parent, or you can imagine, you have a child, that young kid, 2, 3 years old, able to kind of walk around, and they run out into the street, not looking to see if there are cars or danger, right? So it's not a moment of let's debate, right? That's a moment of like take action, stop right now, right? So there's moments where short-term intimidation, if you will, it's not, you're not intimidating the child, but kind of like for being forceful, right? I guess is really where I was going with that. Is actually very pertinent, right? But those are very limited things in human relations, right? If we do that at work all the time, it creates a lot of resentment, right? If you do that with friends, you're not gonna have a lot of friends, or you're gonna have friends that tiptoe around you and don't why you want to talk about sensitive subjects because they don't feel like you're really paying attention to them. The second way he says to talk to deal with people is to beg. Like he talks about it like begging people, or what is it? He talks about it. He says this: "I won't assert myself in any way or cause you any trouble. In return, you be nice to me." So it's sort of an appeasement approach to working with people. Like, okay, if I'm nice to you, then maybe you'll be nice to me, right? And he says that actually, being a doormat like that is just not helpful, right? It really doesn't give you the respect you're looking for. This is the third way is just is an exchange. You're exchanging something you want for something they want, just like in business transactions, right? So it's very similar in that sense. So that was a cool thing. And then another one that I thought was really helpful. There was another key bit in there. Okay, so he says this, and this is, I think, this is for me. When I first read this, I was my early 20s, and it struck this. I think this is the thing that stuck with me a lot. He says, once you understand why people act the way they do, you'll automatically find yourself feeling more confident in dealing with them. And I and for the first part, the first half of that, like if you figure out why people do what they do, that's been a lifelong journey for me. Like, why do people do why? Why do people do all the things they do? And there's been lots of great statements about that. Just very simple, statements about that sort of thing. And one of which is, hey, we're all doing the best we can, right? Given our circumstances, our history, the situation, if you put all together, most people are going to probably react similarly, right? If not the same. So there's a lot of factors in that, right? But people act out of those things, not to mention way they're feeling at the moment, what goals they've set for themselves. Like there's all kinds of, it's complicated. People are complicated. That's another way to put this, right? They're just complicated. All right. So anyway, that was, those are two things I thought were great. So this is part one, right? We're going to talk about the first two chapters. So part one, making human nature work for you. So the first chapter is your key to success and happiness. Okay. So again, I'm going to try not to read all my highlighted stuff. There's a fair amount in here, but he says basically he kind of boils it down to this, and I have to agree that your key to success and happiness, which is what everybody's looking for, and they define success in different ways, obviously, and happiness in different ways. People aren't, some people love to be very active. Some people are more, comfortable just being by themselves. More people want to be in a group and work with people, right? So not everybody's the same, and happiness is different for everyone. So however you define it is up to you, but we're all looking for it, right? We all want it. And so I think it's good to just remember this. And he says it in here. So it doesn't matter how you define it. It always involves other people in some way, shape, or form, right? Even if you like to be isolated, you want to be by yourself. Well, if you have a home, other people made that home, right? If you watch Netflix, other people made those shows, right? So, and that's maybe kind of, I don't know if you find that kind of like irritating, but it's something to consider, right? Even if you like being by yourself, you still rely on others to be able to be by yourself, right? And that's not a bad thing. Like some people, they recharge their batteries by being alone. I know for me, there are times when I need to be alone, right? And there's other times I need to be around other people. And I've learned that about myself, right? I'm kind of an ambivert. You can look that up. All right. So then the other thing is that I thought was really great that he wrote, and this book was originally written in the 50s, all right? And at this point, that's 70 years ago, right? It's getting close to 70 years ago. And he wrote something that was true then, but it's actually not actually, but it's so also very true now. And that is this. He wrote this. I'm going to read this part. This might be the last one. No, there'll be one more I'll read to you. So he wrote this: as civilization progresses, as new inventions shrink our world smaller and smaller, as our economic life becomes more specialized and complicated, other people become more and more important to us. And man, if you think about all the computer innovations that have happened over the last 70 years, and he's talking about things, the world shrinking, right? We've got, you know, you get a phone, right? You've got everything at your fingertips. You've got a whole world of information. It's beyond an encyclopedia, right? It's news, it's up to date information, it's craziness, right? It's all kinds of stuff going on, and you have access to it like that. And before this era, the last 10 years, let's say, it wasn't like that at all. And many of us that are not 20 in our 20s anymore remember pre-internet, right? And so things have gotten, the world has shrunk. We can connect to people instantly around the world at any time, which is great. It's also intimidating for a lot of people. It's also intimidating if you're trying to carve yourself in that menagerie of people out there. 7 billion. How do you stand out with 7 billion, right? The thing is, you're you. There is no one else. There is no one in this. You're 1 in 7 billion or so, right? Remember that. Just keep that in mind, I guess. All right, so that's for another month of encouraging. But he's he just the other thing that I've heard in the last 20 years, a very quick phrase that really points to what he said in a different way, and that is high tech, high touch. So the more high tech we get, the more high touch, the more we need to stay connected to people. Because if everything becomes so high tech with no connection, we begin to feel isolated and alone. And unfortunately, there's reports of that. I've heard reports. I don't know if I've researched it myself yet, but I've heard from multiple sources that there are reports out there that more people feel isolated, even though we're more connected nowadays. And that, I think we need to keep in mind that it's all about people. It's not about how cool the tech is. And I love cool tech. I think it's great, but it is about people. All right, and then the other thing he says about this whole thing of like other people is that influencing others is an art. It's and not a science. It's not a gimmick. It's not like you learn a trick. You learn a certain phrase or 10 phrases that work with anyone, or these phrases work with these people and these phrases work with these. It is like, no, that's not it. That's it's not authentic, right? He's trying to say that you have to be authentic. You have to really want to help other people. You want to exchange, like he said, like you want to exchange with something you want for what they want. It's not about I get what I want and you don't get anything, or I'm gonna fool you in getting what I want just so I can have what I want, right? It's none of that. It's an art of how do you exchange in a way that's works for both of you, right? And that's not a science per se with people. It may be with bartering for a business. There may be a science to that to some degree, but it's an art. Dealing with people is an art for sure, right? All right, so that's chapter 1. Really good, just really good, laying it down like this is how it is. You know, whatever you define the success, you need other people, right? Okay, now the second chapter is um, how to use basic secret for influencing others, right? And I think of the day when influence. I think people have this negative baggage about influence, like you're gonna put one over on them, right? Or you're gonna hypnotize them, or some crazy thing. So I think that word has morphed from when Les used the word to now. I think the connotation of it has shifted to some degree. So I don't have you're influencing people no matter what you do. That's the other thing. He didn't say this in his book, but that I want to bring it up now because I think it's important that we're always influencing people. Are we influencing them in ways that work for them and you? Or are you influencing in ways that only work for them and not for you? Are you influencing ways that work for you and not for them? Or are you influencing for ways that work for you and work for them? Right. So, which I may have already said. Sorry. Um, so, we're influencing. That's the way it is. We're here. Our very presence on this planet is influencing things around us all the time. So there's no bad thing about influence. It's just what kind of influence are you going to have? Are you going to have impact, or are you going to leave a wake of just disaster? Right. All right. Anyway, so I think this is the last thing I'm going to read to you. It's on page 13 in my version of the book. which is old. He talks about egotism, right? And he gets into the whole thing of like, what is egotism? And again, that's another word that, I mean, even then he was like, there's good ego and there's bad ego, like arrogant, right? Going over the top, right? So here's the thing. He just lays it out. He's like, look, everybody's an egotist, is what he called it, right? We're all concerned about ourselves, which is true. We're definitely, it's survival, right? It's a basic instinct of being alive is survival. That's being an egotist. It's not a bad thing. If we take it so far as to think we're more important than others, I think now we're headed down a path of, dangerousness, so to speak. So anyway, he lays it out like this. He said there's 4 facts of life, which when you read that, like, wow, 4 facts of life. Okay, check it out. It's not just a show from the 80s. Just kidding. All right, here we go. So the 4 facts of life, according to Les Giblin, is 1, we are all egotists, kind of like what I just said. Number 2, we are all more interested in ourselves than in anything else in the world, for that same reason I mentioned. 3, every person you meet wants to feel important and amount to something. Number 4, there's a craving in every human being for the approval of others so that he can approve of himself. All right, so basically, if you're on, it's the way he puts it is this: if you're on good terms with yourself, you're on good terms with others. So, and that's been spoken in lots of different ways, written about in many books. That you have to, kind of love yourself. You have to be okay. You have to accept yourself. If love is a too strong a word for you, you have to accept yourself as you are, with your flaws, with your history, with all the stuff that you did wrong. You are who you are, right? Once you can, and just say, "I'm okay being who I am," then you can reach out and help others. If you don't have that first part, it's you can reach out, but there's something holding it all back. You won't gain the charisma of attracting others as much, if any, right? If you're not okay with you, it's really hard to be okay with others. I would have to totally agree with that. I know for me, when I was really young, I was not okay with myself. There was so much going on, and details don't matter. Childhood was not ideal. It wasn't horrible, or I wasn't homeless or anything like that, but it wasn't ideal, and I took that to mean lots of bad things about me, and I just thought there was something wrong with me, and not true, right? It's just not true. I am who I am, and I've made mistakes, but doesn't make me a bad person. It just makes me somebody who's made mistakes and learned from them, right? Okay, anyway. So here's the deal. The next thing he gets into is like, well, how come some people, have trouble with this? How come they can't get out, start thinking along these lines to some degree? And he says, here, sorry, something to keep in mind. And he puts it out like this: the LS/MFT, right? So just if you're having trouble, like, what is going on with that guy or that gal, right? LSMFT. Okay. And I've watched this in teaching, mostly mostly teenagers. I've taught a lot of teenagers in my day, but I've noticed that this holds true for a good 90-95% of the time, right, or more. And the LSMFT stands for low self-esteem, means friction and trouble. So somebody that's kind of wrought with friction and trouble, or they look for trouble, or they seem to just always kind of, everybody around them. Usually they're dealing with low self-esteem in some way, shape, or form, right? And it's not a matter of, okay, we just need to tell them to feel good and they'll be fine. That's not how self-esteem works. We've experimented with that the last 40 years. I don't know if we've got it figured out yet, but the thing is, when you can help, what he goes to is, he doesn't get into like the whole psychology of it. He just says, look, if you help others like themselves more, they'll like you, right? Well, how do you do that, right? Well, you compliment them, right? You tell them, you tell them how, like, that's impressive what you can do. Like, you're unique. You can do the things you do. That's not what I do. I think that's really cool that you can do that, right? You may not even agree with it. You may not even like what they like. That doesn't matter that much, right? If you want to, if you want to, and it's not a, again, this is not a gimmick. Like, oh, that is very nice that you can do that, right? It's not that. It's just be genuinely open to where they're at and what they can do and go, huh, that's pretty cool. whatever it is, right? Um, and with an example, it'd be easier, but really just being like a curious person or a person that's really um, enamored with the uniqueness of everyone is a very great gift to have, right? And you can foster that in yourself by just again being curious about people. Try to figure out why they tick, right? That's kind of why I put that out there from the get go. So like if you can figure out why, then you can appreciate them, right? And you can help them, and you can compliment them authentically. All right. Anyway, so then he says there's a first law. He throws out these laws, but anyway, the first law in working with people, it says, look, people act or fail to act largely to enhance their own ego. I mean, that's where it's coming from, like being this whole egotist thing. Is that just look? People act out of their ego. They don't necessarily act out of circumstance. They don't even, sometimes don't even act out of their feelings. It's, if they want to protect their ego, they will. So that's chapter two. Interesting, right? So it's interesting. The basic secret of influence others is really just remembering that people work out of their ego. We're all egotists, right? And to help them feel important is a key to having that mutual um, back and forth trade of what you want and what they want. All right, chapter three. Let's go on to this. So you want to cash in on your hidden assets. Oh, okay. I didn't know I had hidden assets, right? So he kind of goes down the same line, but he's just talking about look, you got to just again your the asset you have is just remembering that the universal hunger is to feel important for everyone. Everyone wants to feel important. I know I do. I'm not gonna shy away from that. I want to feel important. How important and how that looks, who knows? Everybody's got their own version of what important means, right? But I certainly have that need. I've noticed that my whole life that I don't want to just exist. I want to make an impact. I want to leave a mark and make this world a better place by being here, right? Leave it better than when I got here. Anyway, so he says, okay, well, how do you do that, right? So he just look, just recognize and acknowledge others. Saying hi. He doesn't say this in the book, but just when you're out and about, just say hi to people. Hi. Hey, how's it going? Hello. Just pleasantly, hello. Eh, eh, just that, right? And that may be the first time in a day, a week, right, that someone has actually just talked to them. Again, we're feeling so isolated because we feel like we've got everything at our fingertips that we're not really connecting. And right now we're in when this is recorded, we're still in the middle of the pandemic of the coronavirus. And where I live, there's a mask mandate now in the state. And so everyone in public is to wear a mask for safety reasons. Okay, great. You know, let's keep each other safe. That's awesome. The problem, the downside, it's not a problem, but one of the downsides, there's a lot of upsides. One of the downsides, because I'd like to look at everything. Like I don't, even if I agree or disagree with it, that's not really my point right now. Because masks do good things, right? They help your germs stay with you, so to speak, right? You don't spread it around. So that's the main advantage. The one disadvantage, though, that in public, you can't see their face, right? You can't. I mean, you can tell who it is, but you can't tell. You can't tell their emotion when they're speaking. You can't hear them as clearly. It gets more impersonal. Even around people, we're more impersonal because of it, and that's dangerous in my mind. We're already impersonal with the internet and things being online so much and all that. I just that part is really hard. That I don't. I want to be more connected to people, not less. So we'll get through it. It's gonna be fine. It's just one of the, it's a downside. It's like an unintended consequence. It's fine. We'll get through it. Hopefully we'll get a vaccine and we'll get right on through. Right, get back to normal. Okay. Anyway, and then the last thing I'll just say is he said there's kind of three things that you can do to cash in on these hidden assets you have, which is give people compliments. That's really the asset. Is you can compliment people anytime you want. You're never going to run out of it, right? It doesn't cost you anything to give them away as just a small gift. Hey, that's a nice hat. Hey, where'd you get those shoes? Those are great. Wow, nice car. Where'd you get that motorcycle? That's really cool, but it's fun. Just whatever, right? You're just complimenting people. Like that's Oh, did you go to University of Minnesota? Oh, great. That's a nice shirt. Right? It's just you could say it's like an icebreaker, if you will, but think in just terms of just complimenting people. Just make them feel important by just acknowledging their presence. Give them a compliment. It doesn't have to be you're the best person in the whole wide world, and I think you're the best, awesome, as whatever. Right? No, nice hat. They chose the hat. Right? They're wearing it. It's important to them. Okay, nice hat. Great. It's not gonna hurt you any. Anyway, he says there's three things you could do. First, when you're kind of on this trek of like, how do you cash in on this? How do you get better at this? Right? Think. One is think other people are important. Don't just don't just like, oh yeah, whatever. Yeah, sure, they're important. No, 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 no. Like you have to constantly tell yourself people are important, including you. You're a people too, by the way. It's not other people important. This is people on the planet are important. Okay. And then when you come at it from that standpoint, then that means it's just a couple important people talking, which is cool. Second thing is to really go out of your way to notice others. And I've been kind of saying it already, but just actually notice other people. Look at them. Not creepy, but look at them, right? And give them a compliment if, whenever the mood strikes, which hopefully is often. And the last thing is, and this, well, I guess I kind of already said, but just make other people feel important. And that's the point he's making through all of these actually, because it really is the key to this whole thing. Is it's really, I mean, if you think about it, don't you? I mean, if you want to feel important, how about if you help someone else feel important? They'll probably like you more for it, right? So anyway, those are that's the first three chapters of How to Have Confidence and Power in Dealing with People by Les Giblin. So we're gonna do the next four chapters. So it's gonna be it's the next section. It's part two, and part two goes through. No, actually, we're gonna do part two and part three. So it's 4 through 7, chapters 4 through 7 next week, and read those and check it out. And again, always reach out if you got questions or if you have your own comments or like, hey, that was a good point, or hey, what about this? What do you think about this? Great, let's have a dialogue about it. Again, my email kfurman@e3lc.net. All right, hope you're doing great, and I will catch you around later. Take care.